The first known attempt by our species to leave Africa happened at least 210,000 years ago. It failed completely. The people who made it didn't found a lineage. They didn't become your ancestors. As far as we can tell, they just vanished. And it would happen again and again, at least 3 separate times. Over more than 150,000 years, small groups of humans walked out of Africa and disappeared from the fossil record. Only one push actually worked, and it happened tens of thousands of years after the failures. Homo sapiens, anatomically modern humans, people who look and think basically like us, first show up in the fossil record in Africa. The oldest confirmed remains come from Jebel Faya, Morocco, dated to roughly 300,000 years ago. For most of the next 200,000 years, our species barely left the continent at all. Then, in fits and starts, it tried. Here's what those attempts looked like, and why almost all of them ended in silence. The Sahara wasn't always a desert. For at least the last 800,000 years, it has flipped between bone-dry desert and green savanna on a roughly 20,000-year cycle, driven by slow wobbles in Earth's orbit that shift the African monsoon rains north. Geologists call these windows Green Sahara phases. Rivers ran across what's now empty dune. Lakes filled basins the size of small seas. That mattered enormously, because the Sahara is currently one of the most effective population barriers on Earth. During a Green Sahara phase, it stopped being a wall and became a corridor, grassland and water all the way from sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean coast and the Sinai land bridge into Asia. Every time the Sahara greened, animals moved north. Migration data from that periodic cycle shows the timing lines up disturbingly well with several early appearances of humans outside Africa. The climate wasn't a backdrop to this story. It was the door. And the door didn't stay open. Within a few thousand years, the orbit would wobble back, the rains would retreat, and the Sahara would slam shut behind whoever had just walked through it. In 1978, 2 badly damaged skull fragments were pulled from a cave wall in Apidima on Greece's Mani Peninsula. For 40 years they sat in storage, tentatively labeled Neanderthal. In 2019, a team led by paleoanthropologist Katerina Harvati ran uranium series dating and virtual 3D reconstruction on both. One of them, Apidima 2, checked out as Neanderthal, dated to around 170,000 years ago. Ordinary. Expected. The other one, Apidima 1, did not behave. It dated to more than 210,000 years old, and its rounded brain case had none of the Neanderthal's telltale ridge. Apidima 1 presents a mixture of modern human and primitive features that pointed towards something else entirely, an early Homo sapiens. In Europe, over 150,000 years before modern humans were supposed to have gotten there. The finding is genuinely disputed. Some researchers question whether a single, damaged fragment can carry that weight of proof. But if Harvati's team is right, it means a group of humans reached southeastern Europe, then simply didn't last. Neanderthals, who show up at the same site, in the same cave, later appear to have replaced them. No sapiens DNA from that population has ever turned up in any human alive today. They got to Europe first, and it changed nothing. Moved southeast to Mount Carmel in Israel. In 2002, archaeologists working at a site called Misliya Cave. Its roof caved in millennia ago, sealing everything inside like a time capsule, pulled out an upper jawbone with most of its teeth still attached. It took over 15 years of dating work to nail down the age. The final number, the fossil dates to 177,000 to 194,000 years ago, making it, at the time of its 2018 publication, the oldest confirmed Homo sapiens fossil ever found outside Africa. The finding indicated that modern humans were present in the Levant at least 50,000 years earlier than previously thought. This wasn't a fluke traveler. Stone tools at Misliya matched a toolkit found at multiple other Middle Eastern sites, all clustering to a similar age, meaning this wasn't one lost family. It was a population moving through the region with a shared technology. And yet, like the Greek skull before it, this population also disappears from the record. No unbroken line connects Misliya's people to modern non-African populations. Whatever happened to them, it wasn't a lasting colonization. It was a visit. 2 more cave sites, Skhul and Qafzeh, sit close to Misliya on that same stretch of Israeli coast. Excavated decades earlier, they held something Misliya didn't. Bodies laid deliberately in the ground, some arranged with what looks like intention. One skeleton found holding the jaw of a wild boar against its chest, another buried near red ochre pigment. Dated to roughly 90,000 to 120,000 years ago, Skhul and Qafzeh represent some of the earliest strong evidence of deliberate human burial anywhere on Earth. A population that wasn't just surviving outside Africa, but doing something that looks unmistakably symbolic while they were there. For a while, it looked like this group might be the ones who made it, the successful wave. Then the climate flipped cold again. Neanderthal remains start showing up in the same caves, in the same valley, not long after. The going theory, as temperatures drop, Neanderthals, already better adapted to cold Eurasian winters after hundreds of thousands of years there, simply outcompete or replace this population in the exact region they'd settled. 3 attempts, 3 disappearances. Every single time, humans reached new land, and every single time, something reset the board back to zero. Around 74,000 years ago, a volcano called Toba, on the island of Sumatra, erupted with a force estimated at thousands of times larger than Mount St. Helens, one of the largest volcanic events of the last 2 million years. For decades, some researchers proposed a dramatic idea that the Toba eruption triggered a volcanic winter severe enough to crash the global human population down to a few thousand breeding individuals, a near-extinction bottleneck baked into humanity's genetic history. It's a compelling story, and it's still argued about. More recent archaeological evidence, including sites in Africa and India that show continuous human occupation straight through the ash layer, has pushed many researchers to doubt that Toba caused a global collapse at all. What isn't disputed, somewhere in this same rough window, after Toba, after the failed Levant migrations, after the Green Sahara doors kept opening and closing, the population that would actually succeed was still sitting in Africa, small, and about to try again. Sometime between about 70,000 and 60,000 years ago, a group of humans crossed the narrow strait at the southern end of the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb, barely 20 kilometers wide at its narrowest point even today, and likely narrower during a low sea level period. No boats have survived from that crossing. If boats were even used, it may have been walked, waded, or rafted. This time, the population didn't vanish. Stone tools at Jebel Faya, in the modern United Arab Emirates, dated to around 125,000 years ago, hint that people were testing this southern route even earlier. But it's this later wave, moving along the coastlines of Arabia and South Asia, that keeps going and keeps leaving descendants. The pace is the part that doesn't seem physically possible. Genetic and archaeological evidence suggests that within roughly 5,000 to 10,000 years, descendants of this same wave had followed the coast all the way to Southeast Asia and crossed open ocean, with no compass, no maps, no metal tools, to reach Australia. Sites like Majd Beeb in Australia's Northern Territory push confirmed human presence there back to at least 65,000 years ago. Every non-African person alive today, every population in Europe, Asia, the Americas, and Oceania, traces the overwhelming majority of their ancestry back to this one successful wave. Not the Greek skull, not Misliya, not Skhul Qafzeh, this one. Here's the detail that tends to stop people cold. Geneticists estimate the founding population of every non-African human alive today, all 8 billion of us, may have numbered as few as 1,000 to a few thousand individuals, funneled through a strait you could swim across on a calm day. 3 earlier groups, made of real people, with names we'll never know, walked into new continents and simply stopped existing in the historical record. One group didn't. The difference between all of us existing and none of us existing may come down to a strait 20 kilometers wide, at exactly the right sea level, at exactly the right moment. What this really shows is that leaving Africa wasn't one triumphant departure. It was a species failing, over and over, for at least 150,000 years, before it finally didn't. Every population before the successful one did everything right by the standards we usually tell this story with. They adapted, they innovated, some of them even buried their dead with what looks like grief. And it still wasn't enough. Being human, it turns out, has never been about getting it right the first time. It's about being the version that happens to still be standing when the door opens one more time. I'm barely human. And if you like finding out how strange it actually was to become human, there's a new one of these every week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you want to see where that one successful group ended up going next, because walking out of Africa was only the beginning, go watch. They crossed entire oceans thousands of years ago with absolutely nothing. It picks up almost exactly where this one leaves off.